Hi, hello there, and welcome back to STEAM with Steve. Today we're going to go through how to do the multiplying and dividing of fractions. Now this is so much easier than the adding and subtracting because all you got to do is times the top together and times the bottom together. The one little caveat to make your life even easier is you need to cancel out the top and the bottom if you can see if there's multiples. So let's jump on in and get into this PowerPoint. So we're going to understand how to multiply fractions together. Then we're going to also do dividing of fractions, which is pretty much the same as multiplying, except you flip the last number. And then we're going to have a little real life scenario to try and solve. So the first question, if you had 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3, if we would only knew how to add, we would just literally add the top all together. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 gave us 8. And then because it had the same denominator, it's the same as 8/3. Now, a faster way, if you have 4 2/3, do you see just times 4 times 2/3? And 4 times 2 gives you the 8 as well. So it's another way of doing this. So the other way of graphically seeing this as well is if you have 3/8 and then 4/5, basically you're going to chop the 3/8 up into 40ths and chop the 4/5 into 40ths as well. And then, basically times the top together. 3 times 4 gives you that 12. And then 8 times 5 gives you the 40. And then you add those two shapes together, which is kind of cool. Another way sort of graphically to sort of see that intersection and how they connect. So the first way, it's a really simple method. If you have a half plus 3/5, times 3/5, you multiply the top together. So 1 times 3 gives you 3. And then 2 times 5 gives you 10, so multiplying the bottom, and then you try and reduce the fraction if you can. So 3/10, can't do much more, and we're all good. So then we move on to the next one. So then the example I have here, so we've got 3/8 times 4/5. So we're going to go through exactly the same process. So 3 times 4 gives us 12, and then 5 times 8 gives us 40. And then because we've got two even numbers on the top and the bottom, we should look at that and go, we should be able to reduce it. And in this case, we could divide them both by 2 a couple of times, or we could see that's the same as 4, and 4 goes into both of those. So we can divide the top by 4, and we can divide the bottom by 4. So we get the 3/10. Now, hopefully, we should pick up a little pattern there, and we can see that we're timesing the top by 4 and then dividing it by 8. So instead of doing that, why don't we just divide it once by 4 at the end? So that's another little trick. So in this case here, we got 5 times 3 and then 7 times 5. So we follow the same process. So 3 times 5 gives us 15, and then 7 times 5 gives us 35. So then that reduces because we divide both the top and the bottom by 5, and we get down to 3/7. Now, hopefully what you're seeing here is we're timesing the top by 5, then dividing it by 5. So instead of doing that, we can cancel those 5s out, because as long as they're on the top and the bottom, and just get the 3/7. So the expert method is a little bit different. The first step is we're trying to reduce the factors on the top and the bottom. So if we have a half times 4/5, we'd see that we can divide the top and the bottom by 2, because there's a 4 and a 2. So that cancels out to give us 1, and then that cancels out to give us 2. Then we do exactly the same step as we did before. So we multiply the tops together. So then 1 times 2 gives you 2. And then 1 times 5 gives you 5. And then you do a little check to see if you can reduce it, but you actually have done the reduction already. And that's pretty much the steps. So coming back to the original example, 3/8 times 4/5, we can see that we can divide both the top and the bottom by 4. So we can reduce it because they've got factors in common. So the first step is you divide this by 4. Then you divide this by 4. Then we just go across and times the top and the bottom. So 3 times 1 gives you 3, and then 2 times 5 gives you 10. Now, some people might be freaking out a little because they've got to learn the times tables here, but if you do get stuck, you can always just go back to the original pattern of times at the top and the bottom together. This will, however, make you significantly faster if you do this little hack. So have a go at this one. Awesome. So if you looked here, I'm always going to use the hack way because it's faster. So the 6 and the 9, that's screaming at me because they're 3 times tables. So I can divide this by 3, and I can divide the 9 by 3. So in this case here, divide the 9 by 3 and I get 3, and divide the 6 by 3 and I get 2, and then I times the top together. So 2 times 7 gives me 14, and then 3 times 11 gives you 33. Done. Similarly with this one, have a go. So this one actually has a double reduction that you can do. So you can divide both the top and bottom by 7, and you can also divide the top and the bottom by 3. So 7 goes into 14 2 times, and then 7 goes into 7 once. And then to go even further, we can divide the top and the bottom by 3. So 9 divided by 3 gives you 3, and then 3 divided by 3 gives you 1. So before we've done any timesing, we've actually reduced this right down, and it saves you a heap of time. So rather than doing 9 times 14, which gets a really big number, by doing it this way, we've just gone 1 times 1 is 1, and then 3 times 2 is 6, and gotten exactly the same answer as opposed to going through that long method. So when we do improper fractions versus proper fractions, hopefully remember this. So you simply multiply the denominator. So 2 times 7 gives you 14, and then you add on the remainder. So 14 plus the 3 gives you 17 over 7. So going from a mixed number into a improper fraction, really, really simple. So with this, you have to do that step first. There is no hack here. Unfortunately, you do have to go through that process. So the first step here is 3 times 4 is 12, plus the 3 gives you 15 on 4. And then same over here, 2 times 5 is 10, plus the 4 gives you 14 on 5. Now, I would go through and hack this. So I've got 15 and 5, so I can divide both the top and bottom by 5. And similarly, I can divide the 4 and the 14 both by 2. So the 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times. And then over here, 2 goes into 4 2 times. And then 2 goes into 14 7 times. Then I go through in times. So 3 times 7 gives you 21. And then 2 times 1 gives you 2. And then how many 2's go in 21? Well, that's just 10 whole numbers and a half. Cool. So with these questions here, I'll just pause the video and have a go at them. So first one, basically 2 times 3 is 6, and then 7 times 5 is 35, so that gives you 6 and 35. This one over here, we have a 2 on the top and the bottom, so we can divide, 4, so we can divide both these by 4, so 4 goes into 8 2 times, and 4 goes into 4 once, and then 2 times 4 is 7 is 14, and then 5 times 1 is 5, so that gives you 14 on 5, and then that goes in 2 times with 4 remainder. Similarly over here, 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 gives you 10 on 3. Then 2 times 5 is 10, plus the 2 gives you 12 on 5. And then you can divide both the top and bottom by 3. So that goes into once, and that goes into 4. And then you can divide the 10 and the 5 both by 5. So you get 5 on that. And then you just times the top together. So 2 times 4 gives you 8. And then 1 times 1 gives you 1. And then you got 8 on 1, or just 8. So when you do division, it's exactly the same process, except one small little step. You have to flip the second number. So instead of having this fraction the way it normally is, when you see the divide sign, you flip it, and then you multiply it exactly the same way. When you flip a number, that is known as the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of a half is actually 2, because you've flipped them around. So normally if we had this number, 5 on 9, as soon as we hear the reciprocal, we need to then flip the 5 and the 9 around, so that becomes 9 on 5. So have a pause the video and see if you can do these ones. Awesome. So the reciprocal of 5 on 8 is just 8/5. The reciprocal of 3 on 2 becomes 2 3/3. Reciprocal of 3 on 3/4. First of all, we've got to do 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 1, which gives you 13 on 4, and then flip it. So that gives you 4 on 13. And the last one, you do 1 times 11, which is 11 plus 1. So we've got 12 on 11, and then we flip it to get 11 on 12. So the first step is you always flip the last term when you're dividing, and then you change the symbol to a multiply. So this is the same as 1/5, so that stays the same. But instead of divide, we now say it's times 4 on 3, and that will flip it. Now, when we go through that, then we reduce the factors on the top and the bottom. So in this case here, there was nothing to do. and then we just multiply the fractions together. So 1 times 4 is 4, and then 5 times 3 is 15. So a common mistake a lot of people think when they divide, the number needs to necessarily get smaller. My easiest way that I teach in my class is I talk about how if you had 12 pizzas and you wanted to see how many halves are inside of it, you would do 12 divided by a half. There would be 2 halves each time, wouldn't it? So that would actually be 24 halves inside of the 12 pizzas. So think when you divide, sometimes you might actually get a bigger number, which does mess with some people's heads sometimes. So 3/5 divided by 4/5, exactly the same process. So first step is you always flip the last term. So 3/5 now becomes times 5 on 4. And then because there's a 5 on the top and the bottom, we can actually reduce those. So we cross them out. So that goes to a 1, that becomes a 1, and then that becomes 3/4. Have a go at this one. Cool. So the first step is we flip the last term. So it becomes still 3/8. So 3/8 times 6 on 5. And then because we've got a 6 and the 8, you can both divide those by 2. So 6 divided by 2 becomes 3. And then 8 divided by 2 becomes 4. Then we times them across. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then 4 times 5 is 20. So a little bit harder with a whole number. So the first step here is we need to change it around. So we've got 856 divided by 20 on 3. So 6 times 3 is 18 plus the 2, which gives you 20 on 3. And now we just follow exactly the same process. So we flip the last term. So then that becomes 56 times 3 on 8, 3 on 20. So that 6 cancels out, and we get 1, and we get a 2. And then 5 goes into 24 times, 5 goes into 5 once, and then 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 4 is 8, and you're done. So sometimes the numbers will work out perfectly as well, which is pretty cool. This one's a little bit harder, so just pause the video and have a go. So the first step is we do 4 times 6, which is 24, plus the 3, which gives us 27 on 6. And then we're going to divide that by 3 on 2. We then flip the last term, because we're always when we're dividing, we need to flip it. So 27 on 6 times 2 on 3. And then because we've got a 27 and a 3 and a 2 and a 6, we can cancel these guys out. So the 6 gets cancelled, divided by 2 gives us 3. 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And then 3 divided by 3 gives us 1. And then 27 divided by 3 gives you 9. Then we go through and times them together. So we got 9 on 3, which then works out perfectly just to be 3. There's some extra questions to have a go at. So 2/5 divided by 3 on 7. Basically flip the 3 on 7, becomes 7 on 3, and then times them together. So you got 14 on 15. And then 15 on 16, you flip that, so it becomes 16 on 15. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times, and then 8 goes into 8 once, and 8 goes into 16 2 times, and then you times the top together and the bottom, you can get 2 on 3. And the last one, you would do 2 times 4, which gives you 8, plus the 1, which gives you 9, and then 1 times 3, which gives you 3 plus 1, which equals 4. So you got 9 on 4 divided by 4 on 3. You flip the second one, so now you got 9 on 4 times 3 on 4. And you can't really cancel anything out, so you got to times it together. So 9 times 3 gives you 27, and then 4 times 4 gives you 16, and then 16 goes into 27 once, and then you have 11 remainder. Cool. So hopefully that's giving you some insights into how to multiply and divide fractions. It is pretty straightforward. Basically, just you have to times the top, times the bottom together. If you can reduce things that are on top and the bottom, so it's not next to each other, it has to be on the top and the bottom. Please do that, because that will make it a super more efficient. And then when you divide, you always flip the last term. If you do have any questions, please put them in the comments down below, as it does help. I will try and answer them. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, please give us a like, subscribe, and sign up to the notifications, as it does help with that YouTube algorithm. So trying to get our message out there that math is easy and it's accessible for everyone. So that's it from me. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you did, again, give us a like and subscribe. And yeah, see you next time on Steam It with Steve. Adios.